You know, Anthony, this memory palace technique is only good for lists. I need to memorize more than lists. I need to memorize a language. I need to memorize economics. I need to know everything in detail, and I need to be the best in the world. Yes, yes, but lists, no. Sorry, guys, the memory palace is not just about lists, and yet it is about lists. Oh, how are we going to reconcile this strange paradox? Well, I'll tell you how we're going to reconcile it. Show me a speech that isn't a list of words. Show me a sentence that isn't a list of words. Show me a programming language that isn't a list of words, horizontally, vertically, whatever you like. Show me anything that you would memorize that you wouldn't recite from your mouth in order, that wouldn't be compilable as a list of words. The problem with the memory palace technique is not that it is about lists. It's about if you use it for lists and you don't do the other operations, well then you're not going to create knowledge. And so in this video, we're going to talk about how that lists are not the problem. And if you're focused on lists, well then, you know, you're kind of missing the forest for the trees. So what are we going to do about lists? We're going to just memorize what we have to memorize. We're not going to worry about what the information is. I think that all information at some fundamental level is equal, right? And here's what I mean. The asterisk on a keyboard, right? Why is that different than the letter A? Well, it's different than the letter A because it looks different, right? But A is just a symbol, the same as an asterisk is a symbol, right? And it even has the A sound in it, the ah sound in this case, right? So what's the difference here? The difference is in how we perceive it, how we iterate it, how we speak it, how we represent it, but it's a symbol, and it's a symbol that is attached to sound, right? Now, get into numbers. 73, well, you know, that's different than a word. It's hard to memorize. It's hard to memorize all these digits. Well, why? It's because you're thinking of them in a particular way. But what if you change 7 to a K, and you change 3 to an M, and then you have your friend Cam with a camera? Now, it's very, very concrete. So what does it matter whether it's in a list or not, right? Because if you then have 84 after that, right, then you can have another image, which in this case would be fire, or I like to use a guy with a flamethrower from Missing in Action 2. Now, the fact that the 73 and the 84 are a list doesn't have anything to do with how that I would memorize it, because I'm going to have Cam taking a picture of the guy with the flamethrower, right? Now, it is a list because it's happening in time. So one thing happens before the other. And here we go. This is happening here. This is happening there. And if I were to recall it to you, then I'm going to tell it in order. I'm going to tell the story with the flow of time. First things, second things, third things, etc. So we actually live in a list. We live in a list of the present moment proceeding towards the future, and everything in it proceeds in a list-like fashion. This moment, the next moment, the next moment, the next moment, etc. Now, this is where things get interesting, because the past is very nebulous. It's unfocused. It's strange, dark matter with spooky action at a distance, right? Because it's gone. Where is it? Where's the past? The past is now. It's right now. And in order to talk about it, we have to talk about it in present time. We have to talk about it in flow, in time's arrow, essentially, right? But if we were to use a memory palace to memorize tons of information, if we were to memorize all the historical dates that are important to us, then what's going to end up happening is what I call the rhizomatic effect. So you'll be able to connect certain details. If you think about the date that Napoleon is born, and then you compare it to the date that Giordano Bruno dies, there may be no explicit connection, but you are able to have a sense of time and space, of dimensionality, because you know where they were born as individuals, how close or far they were separated apart, now both in space and time, right? And it doesn't really matter whether you actually speak it out loud or write about it or put it down on a test. You have this otherworldly connectivity in your knowledge set. And if you memorized it as part of a list, so what? As long as it's there in your memory, it doesn't really matter. So the memory palace is not focused on lists. It's focused on the knowledge. It's focused on the connections that you can make, knowing that the way that you will ultimately iterate those things ultimately speak them, share them through reading, through writing, through speaking, etc., you're going to do it in time. It's going to come out one word at a time, one idea at a time, or multiple ideas at a time if you have some sort of compounded concept, right? And concepts are really, really interesting to memorize. And you might want to check out the video that we have about memorizing concepts if you're interested in more on that. But I just want to urge you to not limit the idea of the Memory Palace to lists, but even if it is about lists, no problem. Let's take another example, let's say with language learning. So a lot of language learners, they go for frequency lists and they commit them to memory through whatever tools that they use, and they're still not fluent. They're still not able to speak. They don't even recognize the words later, right? And then they blame the list. Well, what you can do instead is memorize that list. Very, very powerful to do, but then go back and add a sentence to each and every one. And if you're using the Memory Palace technique, this is really simple and fun to do because you've got now the word established and you come back to it and you add a phrase. And then the more words that you have, then the less words you have to memorize for the phrase. You can then just remember the phrase by reusing, essentially, what you've already done. So, you know, as I learn different languages and so forth, in my Sanskrit project, I use wormholing quite a bit because I come up with words again and again and again that are the same. And sometimes they're changed because of the grammatical structure, but they're the same enough. And all I have to do is add a little variation to remember the change, but I can use that core image again. And it just compounds. It gets faster and faster because you're able to just select and choose and, oh, I already memorized that. Let me give you another example from something I just remembered yesterday, so I might be a little stiff here. Be patient. Radio silence may be coming. It was something like Zhongsai Chan Yu. And that basically means the important thing is to participate. So I already know the words Zhong and Sai, and I don't necessarily need to re-memorize them. And, you know, something happened with this is that I'm pretty sure it's the Chan sound that you have to have, but I used somebody I know whose last name is Chen. And then the first time that I spoke it out, I had said Chen Yu instead of Chan Yu, and you know, my wife said Chan Yu, and so I just then thought, oh, well, instead of using my friend with the last name Chen, I will use Jackie Chan, and I just corrected it. Now, whether this is in a list or not is irrelevant, but when you revisit it, it's certainly helpful that sentences are lists, because then you can zero in on just the part that you had a mistake with. Isn't that great? It's freeing. It's tremendously freeing because now you have this stable sentence to work with. And even if there's a crack in part of the sentence, you can go back and fix that crack. You can compound it using more tools from your magnetic imagery. You do have magnetic imagery, don't you? I hope you do, because that's what makes it so fast and what makes it faster and faster, because it compounds over time, especially in language learning, but also when you're memorizing concepts and different information related to books and so forth, especially when you get to using a 00 to 99 PAO and you're just starting to connect things on a page by page level, and you're able to, you know, rapidly use those memorized number images for attaching to concepts in books. It's not going to be something, I'm sorry, that you're going to learn overnight. It took me quite some time to learn it, and I had to actually build the way that I did it. So if you want all that stuff, you know, it's in the numbers course of the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. It's really, really powerful, and I'm just scratching the surface of where I think it can go the more that you yourself explore it with me. So, you know, I love that people share, and I always update the program with the new ideas as they come, and I learn a lot from the participants in the program, and you get all of that value just directed to you through the program. So don't miss it if you're not in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. Anyway, lists. I don't see the issue. I don't see it as a problem. I see it actually as the solution. But I would encourage you to go beyond the notion that it really has anything to do with lists at the end of the day, because the information itself is, as I say, so nebulous. It is connected through the brain in ways that we really don't understand. And if you wanted to become a neuroscientist, these techniques would help you, and maybe you'll be the one who helps create, you know, more understanding, and all the more so when you do so, because there's a strange, I don't know, mystery. I've read books by memory experts, mnemonic, I believe one was called, where they actually say how weird it is. They notice in this book how weird it is that memory techniques are so well documented to work, And yet so few neuroscientists or people who are psychologists who focus on memory actually use the techniques. We have these paradoxes in this world. Frances Yates, one of the most influential figures in the memory world, who wrote The Art of Memory, she also says that she didn't actually use the techniques. What is going on? Use the techniques. They're so easy, they're so fun, they're so rewarding. I hope my enthusiasm for them helps you out. And when you have questions and you get hung up on certain things, just shout out. We'll get them solved. I know there's always a way to sort them out, because at the end of the day, here's the truth. It's not really about the memory palace technique. It's about space itself. Megaston topos apantagar kori, as the ancient Greeks said. Space is ultimate because it contains all things. All information is located in space, right? Where else would it be? The alphabet is always in space, and it's ultimately in the space of your brain. The chemical bath in your brain is encoding through the spatial relationship of chemicals, and it's interacting with other chemicals in the world. The alphabet on your keyboard, the alphabet in the book, it is in ink, in chemical. It's in material reality. And so too is it in your brain. You are connected to it, integrally connected to it. You are the list, or you are the list in which all lists appear. You are the Uber list, right? And you're the only one who can integrate with it as deeply as possible. And how else would you integrate as deeply as is possible except by touching that truth that you are the space in which consciousness appears. Your consciousness. Isn't it miraculous? You are the list that governs all the lists. You are the list in which all other lists appear. And if they haven't appeared yet, you're the only place that they ever can. So get out there, memorize stuff. Don't get caught up in the conceptual stuff unless you really love the conceptual stuff like I do. But, just move. Use the techniques. I love meditation, but in this case, movement is more important than meditation. And in fact, the movement of using the techniques can be meditation unto itself. So thank you. And practice. Or better said, study and practice. The more you put into this, the more you'll get out of it.